Gonzaga is eyeing a big physical guard from New Jersey who played in the Big East as a freshman. Could Jaiden Glover be the next Khalif Battle?
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Well, the NBA playoffs are here. We're going to take a look at which Zags are in, which Zags are not in the playoffs, plus a new player on the women's basketball team. We'll talk about that to close out the show. But first, we start with another known transfer portal target for Mark Few and the Gonzaga Bulldogs. That would be St. John's wing Jaiden Glover. We're going to talk about Jaiden Glover, who he is, his stats, his performance, other teams that are interested in Glover, his potential fit in Spokane. Jaiden Glover, 6'5" sophomore guard, rising sophomore from Brooklyn, New York. He played high school ball in New Jersey. He's born and raised in Brooklyn. 4-star prospect coming out of high school. And he was the 55th ranked prospect in the 2024 recruiting class, according to the 247 Sports composite rankings. I think 247 had him like in the 70s, but a couple other outlets had him a little bit higher. So all told, he ended up being just outside the top 50, but only barely among prospects in that 2024 class. And he committed early to St. John's, but he had a tremendous list of schools that had made him offers out of high school. That includes St. Joe's, Butler, Cal, Creighton, Georgia Tech, Illinois, LSU, Maryland, Nebraska, Ohio State, Oklahoma State, Providence, Seton Hall, Nova, West Virginia, and Xavier. So a huge list of programs that were very interested in him out of high school. Ultimately commits to join Rick Pitino and the Johnnies, and isn't really able to carve out much of a role in his freshman year this past year for a very deep and very loaded St. John's team. I mean, they went out, they got Kadari Richmond and Devin Smith in their backcourt for this past season. They had Simeon Wilcher, a transfer from North Carolina, was filling a big role for them in the backcourt as well. So it was always going to be tough for Glover to crack a rotation for Rick Pitino. It doesn't typically play more than 7-8 guys, similar to Mark Few and Bill Self, and many of the other best coaches in college basketball tend to be pretty rigid with how many players they play in their rotation. So not exactly a shock that Jaiden Glover wasn't able to crack a rotation that featured fifth-year senior guards in Smith and Richmond for Pitino. 22 games total for Jaiden Glover at St. John's last year, averaged about 6.5 minutes per game in those 22 games. Averaged 2.2 total points per game. All told, he shot 30 3-point attempts on the season, made 10 of them. So exactly 1/3, 33.3% of his 3-point attempts went down. He took 19 2-point attempts on the season, made 7 of them. So that's 37%, but obviously a very small sample size there. 4 of 7 from the free throw line. So if you're somebody who's like many do, try to evaluate a player's potential 3-point percentage based on their free throw percentage, 4 of 7. The sample size is literally not important at all. Yes, it's 57%, not important with regards to evaluating his potential 3-point shooting or any other impact that he might be able to make at another school going forward. Glover had 5 total rebounds his first year, his only year in Spokane at St. John's. 6 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, 10 turnovers. He suffered torn tendons in his wrist in February, which ultimately ended his season early. I think his last game was like February 13th or 14th. Somewhere in mid-February was his final game of the season. Again, he wasn't playing much prior to that, but that is why he only ended up appearing in 22 games. Otherwise, he probably would have played closer to 30 games, maybe even more than that for St. John's. Again, the minutes weren't really there regardless, but the injury is a part of why his season numbers are a little bit lower than they would have been. Otherwise, there's no real expectation that this injury will limit him going forward. Like he should be full go for the start of the upcoming season, wherever he ends up playing. A couple notable performances for Glover. He had 11 points, 3 assists, and a pair of boards in 19 minutes against Harvard in the non-conference slate. He also had 7 points on perfect 3 of 3 shooting in St. John's road game against Seton Hall in the Big East. Now, despite being a good but not great high school prospect, and despite not getting a ton of playing time for St. John's this past year, the list of schools that have contacted Jaiden Glover since the end of the transfer portal is a pretty excellent list of schools. Gonzaga, of course, being among them. We'll talk about his fit in Spokane in a second, but Kentucky is also on the list. Mark Pope sniffing out another guard here potentially in Jaiden Glover. Virginia Tech and NC State, both out of the ACC. Creighton, who has pursued him out of high school as well. UAB, Temple, St. Joe's, St. Bonaventure, LaSalle, and UMass, a large group of schools, mostly in the A10 conference or the American Athletic Conference in the case of Temple. Should be in the A10, but that's a story for another time. Regardless, very strong list of schools pursuing Jaiden Glover, or at least reaching out to Jaiden Glover since he's entered the transfer portal. Again, Creighton and St. Joe's are the two schools that have reached out to him since entering the portal, who were also known to have made him an offer, a scholarship offer out of high school. Does that give them a leg up? Not necessarily, but it's certainly notable, especially in St. Joe's case, as they are located somewhat near where he grew up in New Jersey, at least certainly closer than Creighton out of Omaha, Nebraska, although if you wanted to pick a school where you could, make the NCAA tournament and compete against higher level competition, you would certainly pick Creighton over St. Joe's, with no disrespect to St. Joe's or the A10, which are both very quality program and a quality conference. But yeah, I think St. Joe's is a team to watch here if you wanted to go somewhere where maybe he'd get a little bit more playing time right away. He's from New York, from New Jersey, so you want to keep an eye on some of those schools out east, maybe UMass, maybe LaSalle, maybe even Temple and Philly could make a push by trying to get him to come a little bit closer to home as well. Gonzaga is a bit on an island here where there's not really any other school. I think Creighton, just looking at it right now, Creighton might be the next closest school in terms of location to where he's from. And again, Spokane very much on an island for the rest of these schools, but doesn't necessarily mean that Jaiden Glover won't consider it. Again, we'll use Khalif Battle as an example, as a player who started his career in the Big East at Butler. But there's a lot of similarities between Jaiden Glover and Khalif Battle, not just in terms of their career potential arcs. Obviously, Khalif Battle did not come to Gonzaga until he had spent 1 year at Butler, 3 years at Temple, 1 year at Arkansas. Then he made the trek out to Spokane to come to Gonzaga. But so far, Jaiden Glover, who's also from New Jersey, same area as where Khalif Battle came out of high school. Khalif Battle goes to Butler for 1 year and doesn't play very much. Jaiden Glover goes to St. John's for 1 year and doesn't play very much. Now he's in the transfer portal. Temple's even on the list. Like Jaiden Glover could follow up by going to Temple, which is the exact same trajectory as Khalif Battle in terms of starting at a Big East school and then going to an A10 school. Outside of that, they're both 6'5". They're both kind of lauded for their athleticism and their physicality. That is a lot of the scouting reports you read on Jaiden Glover coming out of high school where, hey, this is a big guard. He's got a lot of strength. He's got a lot of size, physicality. He was also given a lot of praise for his shot creation ability, which is something that Khalif Battle very much, had in his bag. That was one of the things that made him so unique to Gonzaga, was they're used to having a lot of catch and shoot guys or point guards who can create, but having an off guard who also creates their own shot is just not something that had really been utilized all that often in Gonzaga basketball history. And I think that, combined with some other things, made Khalif Battle's tenure a bit up and down in Spokane. But certainly Jaiden Glover has that skill set, has that kind of desire to go find his own shot, to go create for himself, to get downhill, to get to the rim. Also a decent three-point shooter, was praised for his ability to knock down open shots coming out of high school as well. So again, some decent similarities. Glover's not built like Khalif Battle was at Gonzaga, but Khalif Battle was 5 years older than Jaiden Glover is right now. So certainly that physicality and that filling out physically is likely going to happen down the line for Jaiden Glover. In terms of the rest of the fit, we've talked about it at length on the podcast. Gonzaga needs guards. They need two guards. And while I don't think that Jaiden Glover would come in and start and play 30 minutes a night at the two the way that Nolan Hickman did, like he's not going to be a seamless replacement there. He's more of a potential depth option. And that's going to have to be up to Jaiden Glover. If he wants to go somewhere where he plays big minutes right away, it's probably not going to be Gonzaga. It's probably also not going to be Kentucky or Creighton or some of the other bigger schools that are on his list. That's where it maybe ends up being something like St. Joe's or Temple or LaSalle or something like that. But if he wants to go somewhere where he can develop, he wants to go somewhere where he can, learn from other guards and work on his craft, learn from the coaching staff, and blossom into a guy who starts and plays big minutes and potentially, carves out the kind of college career that gets you attention from NBA scouts, Gonzaga is the place to go. Now, if money's a concern, obviously there's, if Kentucky wants to shell out a huge amount of money for him, Gonzaga is probably not going to match that. Whether they can or choose not to is kind of a moot point. It doesn't necessarily matter, but if money is the factor, we'll see if Gonzaga is willing to pony up what they would need to pay to land somebody like Jaiden Glover. But I think if it's playing time, it's probably not Gonzaga either. If it's playing time right away, I should say. But if it's development, if Gonzaga can sell him on, hey, come here, and maybe we'll go we'll probably land another 2-guard who starts. You come off the bench, you compete with Emmanuel Innocente for minutes, you compete with Steele Venters for minutes, assuming that he is healthy and ready to go. But maybe by the time you're a junior, you're starting and you're playing big minutes for us. And if you go kill it this year, if you come in and you beat those guys, then yeah, you'll start and you'll play big minutes right away. Like if you're ready to do that, great, come on in and do it. But right now, Gonzaga has multiple holes to fill in the backcourt and absolutely needs some talent. And being able to get a guy like Jaiden Glover, who's not as high profile as many of the other players that they're connected to in the portal. It's not a Rodney Rice, a Trayson Eaglestaff type situation for Gonzaga, but it's a guy who, if he was willing to come in and put in a couple of years of work, could be a massive steal for the Zags in the transfer portal down the line. Well, folks, the NBA playoffs are getting underway, and at least 6 Zags will be in the mix for a national championship or an NBA Finals trophy. We're going to break it all down and more coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 as easily as you stream from your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. And if you already have a console, no problem. A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your games wherever you plug in. And maybe you're not somebody who's interested in gaming. Well, good news. The Amazon Fire TV Stick is the perfect go-to for all of your family's entertainment. We just have them in every one of our TVs in our house over here in the Patton household. The platform is easy to use, and you can it's easy to navigate, and I love how customizable it is. Head to Amazon.com/FireTV-LockedOn to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. Moving away from the transfer portal talk for Mark Few and the Gonzaga Bulldogs to talk about the Zags in the NBA as the playoff picture is nearly set for the National Basketball Association. We're going to talk about the 6 players who are confirmed. Their teams are in the NBA playoffs. We're going to talk about the seeds for those teams and how the season went for those 6 Zags. Then we'll close out the show talking about the Zags who are not in the playoffs. And then we'll also talk about the newest player on the women's basketball team. So we'll start here going in order of the seeds for these teams. Chet Holmgren and the Oklahoma City Thunder earned the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Chet himself unfortunately missed most of this season with a hip injury. He played 10 games, went down with the injury, returned, played 22 more games down the stretch this season. In his 32 total games, Chet looked a lot like he did as a rookie last season, averaged about 15 points, 8 boards, 2 assists, a little over 2 blocks per game, shot 38% from 3. The player that we know he is, the player that he's capable of being. He was absolutely that guy for Oklahoma City. And if he's fully healthy going into the playoffs alongside Isaiah Hartenstein, that's a tremendous front court for the Thunder alongside, of course, Jalen Williams and Lou Dort and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. This is a very dangerous team that could very realistically compete for an NBA championship. I know a lot of Gonzaga fans were also Seattle Supersonic fans, are probably not thrilled about the Oklahoma City Thunder potentially winning it all. I get that. If you want to root against them, I'm certainly not going to tell you how to root. I'm a Portland Trailblazers fan. I was never a Sonics fan, never a Thunder fan either, but I am rooting for our guy Chet. So if there's a silver lining, at least for those of you who are anti-Oklahoma City, at least know that our boy Chet getting a ring would be pretty darn cool if it were to happen. One of the main competitors against Oklahoma City in the Western Conference is the Lakers of Los Angeles. Of course, the now Luka Doncic-led Lakers with LeBron James and our guy Rui Hachimura, who played 59 games for the Lakers this year, started 57 of them, averaged 13 points, 5 boards, and 1.5 assists, shot over 41% from three. Rui's been incredibly consistent. In 5 of his 6 seasons in the NBA, Rui has averaged between 13 and 14 points per game. He is a very, very consistent, you know what you're going to get. He's going to give you 13 to 14 points. He's going to give you 5-ish boards. He's going to shoot well from beyond the arc. Not a great defensive player, but you know what you're getting out of Rui Hachimura. It's funny, we're going to talk about it more with Brandon Clark and with Kelly Olynyk and a couple other guys, but one of the themes with Zags currently in the NBA, at least, is incredible amounts of consistency. Unfortunately, injuries are another theme that we've seen with a lot of Zags, but when these guys are healthy, a lot of them are just delivering year after year after year, very, very similar results. And that's kind of fun to see how well these guys have been able to perform for multiple years in their careers. This is a guy who has not been performing for multiple years because he is a rookie, and that is Anton Watson on the New York Knicks, who are the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. Watson was originally drafted by the Boston Celtics this year in the 2024 NBA draft, signed a 2-way contract with Boston, played throughout the season with the Maine Celtics in the G League. And then when it got to the point where Boston was going to need to activate him onto their active roster per the rules of a 2-way contract, they instead waived him. He got claimed off waivers by New York because he was claimed. New York had to honor the rules of the 2-way contract, which means he played in the NBA with the Knicks. He played in 9 games with New York, almost exclusively in garbage time. In those 9 games, he played 22 total minutes, had 8 points on 4 of 8 shooting. On 2-pointers, he was 0 of 1 from 3, had 3 boards, 2 assists, and a steal. So not a ton of playing time for Anton, but hey, the kid from Spokane is an NBA player. That's incredibly cool. He's on a playoff roster for the New York Knicks. Also very cool to see. Happy for Anton. Looking forward to seeing more from him in the future. Julian Strawther and the Denver Nuggets are a 4 seed in the Western Conference. Julian played 65 games this year with Denver, basically doubled his playing time from his rookie season, where he played about 11 minutes a game. This year he played 21.5 minutes per game and kind of doubled a lot of his stats as well. He averaged 9 points this year, was like about 4-ish last year, averaged a little over 2 boards, 1.3 assists, shot 35% from 3 on about 4 attempts per game. The Nuggets really like to use him as kind of a primary ball handler off the bench, which is not a role he had at Gonzaga, but a role he filled quite admirably for the Nuggets this year. Of course, moved on from their coach, Michael Malone, toward the end of the season. We'll see if that has an impact on Strawther's playing time going forward for Denver with a new coach coming in, but really liked what we saw from him in his second NBA season. On the Eastern Conference side, the Nuggets are the 4 seed in the West. The Indiana Pacers are the 4 seed in the East, and that's their starting point guard, Andrew Nembhard, who played 65 games this year with the Pacers, missed some time with an injury, but he started all 65 games the first year of his career, where he was a full-time starter. The 65 starts is a career high for Nembhard. So is the 28.9 minutes per game, and so are basically every stat that Nembhard put it up this year. 10 points per game, 5 assists per game, 3.3 rebounds per game, 1.2 steals per game. All of those are career highs. Nembhard was also named the Eastern Conference Defensive Player of the Month in the month of January. A tremendous season for Andrew Nembhard. Always love seeing him have that success. And I've talked about him quite a bit on the pod. Of just so happy to see a guy who was not even considered a likely draft pick, not only get drafted, but then sign a huge contract, have a great rookie year, and now is considered an indispensable piece of one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference in the Indiana Pacers. Jalen Suggs and the Orlando Magic are the other team in the NBA playoffs with the Zag on the roster. Unfortunately, Jalen is dealing with an injury right now and will not play, or at least is not expected to play for Orlando in the playoffs. I guess if they make an incredible run all the way to the championship, maybe Jalen will be back by then. He only played 35 games this year due to that quad injury, though. Missed like 20 games, came back, got hurt again, missed the rest of the season. He was really good in the 35 games he played this year. 16 points per game, 4 boards, a little under 4 assists, 1.5 steals. Just a fantastic season for Jalen. He was developing into a bigger offensive contributor for this team than he had been previously in his career. So it's very unfortunate to see that year get derailed by injuries once again, which has been a prominent story for Suggs in his 4-year NBA career. Hopefully he'll be able to kick the injury bug going into next season. But for right now, he's going to be rooting for his Orlando team to make a run in the playoffs. Well, folks, Drew Timme and Domantas Sabonis are among the 6 NBA Zags who did not make the playoffs this season. We're going to talk about their seasons and a few more coming up here in just a second. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, still talking Zags in the NBA. We talked about the guys in the playoffs, the 6 Zags who are going to be on teams that are in the playoffs, we should say. I don't think Jalen Suggs is going to participate. We're probably not going to see a lot of Anton Watson, but Chet, Holmgren, Rui Hachimura, Julian Strother, Andrew Nembhard going to be participating in the playoffs. And there's one other Zag that could. And I bring that up here. It's Brandon Clark for the Memphis Grizzlies. The Memphis Grizzlies that earned the 8 seed. Their play-in game will be on Friday, as many of you are listening to this today, on Friday, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. They'll take on the Dallas Mavericks, who beat the Sacramento Kings in their play-in game. That's why the Kings are no longer in the playoff picture. So for Brandon Clark, he may end up being in that playoff conversation. We'll talk about him here anyway. 64 games for Clark this year, started 18 of them, both career highs for Mr. Clark. However, it was a career low in minutes per game. So he started more games than he's ever started in his career, and yet actually played less minutes, just under 19 minutes per game for Clark. About 8 boards, about 5 rebounds, about 8 points, about 5 boards, about 1 assist. This is the first season of Brandon Clark's 6-year NBA career where he did not average double figures, which I think is more of a testament to how great he has been as a backup big, scoring 10 and 5 per game. This year, 8.3 points, still not bad for a player, only playing 20 minutes per game. Clark remains a very efficient scorer around the rim. Very, very good getting out in transition, good defender for his size. Been fun to see him thrive in the NBA with this Memphis team. We talked about Domantas Sabonis and Sacramento getting eliminated by Dallas in the play-in game. They were the 9 seed, lost to the 10-seeded Mavericks. Sabonis struggled in that game and unfortunately continues a reputation he has earned for not being particularly impactful in the playoffs for the Kings, which is unfortunate because he had another tremendous regular season for Sacramento. 70 games for Domas. 19 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, shot 42% from 3. He missed the All-Star game yet again, another snub for Domas. He absolutely should have been in the All-Star game, but he's likely going to be an All-NBA player, which has happened to him before where he doesn't make the All-Star game but does earn All-NBA nods at the end of the year. Just a weird quirk of there being limited rosters in the All-Star game and him unfortunately not being selected the last couple of years, but another great season for Domas, even if it ended earlier than they would have wanted for Sacramento. This is a team that sold at the trade deadline, so they weren't really even expecting to be in this conversation, and here they were a game away from making it further into the playoffs. Zach Collins and the Chicago Bulls also were a 9 seed on the Eastern Conference. They also lost to a 10 seed in the play-in game, this time being the Miami Heat. For Zach Collins, he and Kelly Olynyk were both traded at the deadline, so spent this year with 2 different teams. Collins played 36 games with the San Antonio Spurs before he was traded to Chicago as part of the 3-team deal that moved De'Aaron Fox from Sacramento to San Antonio and ended up hurting that Sacramento roster. Collins, after 36 games with San Antonio, spent 28 with Chicago. With the Bulls, he averaged about 8.5 points, a little under 7 rebounds, a little over 2 assists, and about 20 minutes per game. Kelly Olynyk, 44 games this season, 24 of them with Toronto, 20 games with New Orleans after the trade. In those 20 games with the Pelicans, Olynyk started all of them, averaged about 11.6 rebounds, 3.5 assists, shot 39% from 3. Again, Kelly, incredibly consistent. He's going to give you about 11 and 5. Pretty much every year of his career, which has been over a decade now, Kelly Olynyk has given you 11 points, 5 boards. He is remarkably consistent in the production that he has, even now toward the twilight of his career. When giving a starting opportunity for a team like New Orleans, he goes out and does exactly what he's always done. Good to see him still out there doing it the way that he's been doing it for the last decade. Corey Kispert is next for the Washington Wizards. 61 games for Corey this year. Didn't actually start any games, which is the first year of his career where he was not at all a starter. However, he did play 26 minutes per game, so wasn't exactly lacking the playing time, just not in the starting lineup. Average 11.5 points, 3 boards, a little under 2 assists, shot 36% from 3. But Kispert was limited with a thumb injury, which kept him out since mid-March, so he hasn't played in about a month. The season, of course, over for the Wizards, but they signed him to an extension. So barring a trade, he's going to still be in Washington next year. It's been fun to see Corey have a great NBA career, but would like to see him get a chance to compete for a championship someday, and it doesn't look particularly close to happening in D.C. Next up, last player, but certainly not least, Drew Timme for the Brooklyn Nets. We'll talk about his NBA career, but first want to acknowledge that Drew Timme was named to the All-G League second team this year after a tremendous season with the Long Island Nets in the G League, the, of course, affiliate of the Brooklyn Nets. For Long Island, Drew Timme averaged 24 points, 10 boards. He had a 50-point game, 51-point game specifically earlier this season with Long Island. I think he had a couple triple-double games. He had like a 35-point triple-double performance. Then he had the 50-point game. He was just absolutely dominant in the G League. He was hitting threes. He was gobbling up rebounds. He was just dishing the ball again. Multiple triple-doubles for him, so multiple 10-assist games. Finally, the Nets not only promote him from the G League affiliate, but they give him a 2-year contract. So he is now under contract as an NBA player. He appeared in 9 games with Brooklyn, had 3 double-doubles in his 9 NBA games, averaged 12 points, 7 boards, 2 assists. Yes, it happened at that end of the season time when teams are tanking and they're playing backups. And like, you got to take some of those numbers a little bit with a grain of salt. But people didn't think Drew was even capable of this. And he went out and averaged 12 and 7 in a 9-game sample, had 3 double-doubles, became the 5th player in Brooklyn Nets history to have a double-double in his first career game. Incredible to see Drew do this. Incredible to see him get his flowers after a fantastic season in the G League. Incredible to see him get the recognition from the G League as a all-league second teamer. Just so much fun to see this from Drew. I'm really excited to see what his role looks like next season when he's got a full year to be in the NBA with Brooklyn. Last thing I want to talk about here before we get you out and get you on with your weekend, before coming back to this stuff next week. The Zag women added a player, Taryn Gardner, out of the transfer portal from Boise State. And I talked about the women's team in a show a few days ago and said, up to this point, the women's team hasn't added anybody. I think it was within an hour of that show being published that we found out Taryn Gardner was signing with the Zags. So a little bit of a jinx there on my end, but a happy jinx. I'm always happy to see the jinx go in this direction where Gonzaga is gaining players on the roster. Taryn Gardner, 5'9" guard, originally from Spokane, actually played at Meade High School in Spokane, the same high school as one Adam Morrison. But she started her college basketball career heading across the border to Idaho to play at Boise State. She spent her entire freshman season with the Broncos, played 32 games, but was coming off the bench, kind of fringe rotation player for the Broncos, about 13 minutes a game, averaged 3.5 points, 2 boards, shot 35.5% from 3 on 2.5 attempts per game. And again, much more of a 3-point shooter than anything else. All told, she took 73 3-point attempts last year for Boise State compared to just 36 2-point attempts. She made 26 threes, again, 26 for 73 is 35.5%. She went 12 of 36 on her 2-point attempts, so about 33% there. Perfect 14 of 14 from the free throw line. All that to say, Taryn Gardner is coming to Gonzaga to be a 3-point specialist. She scored exactly 10 points 5 different times for the Broncos last year, all of them in the non-conference. Her playing time kind of dwindled as the conference season went on, but she had 10 points and 5 steals in a game against Colorado, a very good Colorado team. She had 10 points, a pair of boards, a pair of steals, and 4 turnovers in a loss to West Virginia, another Big 12 opponent there. 10 points, 9 boards, very close to getting a double-double in a win over Utah Tech as well. For Taryn Gardner, she comes into a program at Gonzaga that has a lot of holes to fill in the backcourt. They also have holes to fill in the front court with both Yvonne Ejim and Maud Hybens moving on out of eligibility. But in the backcourt, Gonzaga loses Esther Little and Taylor Dalton to graduation. Both of them are out of eligibility. Both of them played big minutes for Gonzaga last year in the backcourt. Claire O'Connor entered the transfer portal after starting most of her sophomore season for Gonzaga. Bree Salen-Bien also entered the transfer portal and ended up landing at Ball State. We talked about that, I think, on Wednesday's show. So for Gonzaga, there's only really 2 guards who are returning to the program who played big minutes last year. One of them is Allie Turner, who is the best player on this roster right now. She was the second best player for Gonzaga last year behind Yvonne Ejim. She led the conference in 3-point shooting. She set a Gonzaga record for 3-pointers made in a single season. She's an incredible outside shooter and is developing the rest of her game as a passer, as the other things that's kind of asked of her. But bar none, she's a phenomenal three-point shooter. Inez Betancourt is the other guard who's returning, the UConn transfer, who kind of bounced in and out of the starting lineup last year, would sometimes play big minutes, would sometimes kind of disappear. There's some consistency issues with Betancourt, some turnover issues with Betancourt, but when she was on, man, she was a great three-point shooter. She's a great passer, loves to get out in transition and run, very creative passer, really fun to watch. But that's kind of it. They got a couple other guards who are returning who didn't play much last year, Cristabella Sorobo and Vera Gunadin, who were both transfers in, who played mostly garbage time last year for the Zags, but they'll both be back. They could certainly step into bigger roles. But now you get a player in Taryn Gardner who's has some D1 experience, who's from Spokane, who wants to be here, who's a good three-point shooter. All of this points to a great fit for Lisa Fortier's team. I'm excited to see what Gardner can do coming back home and playing for her hometown Zags for her sophomore season of college basketball. Going to wrap it up for me today and for this week here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. I want you all to have a fantastic weekend. We'll be back on Monday, continuing to talk transfer portal, continuing to talk Zags in the NBA, women's basketball. We got all that and more covered coming your way next week. Thanks again for listening. Have a fantastic rest of your day and weekend. And as always, go Zags.